In the last video, we made it up to someone attempting to translate the first line of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This video is just going to be a few endnotes. Over here, the first part of the project is aimed to be a synopsis of alphabet origin translation, which, as we see over here, was completed by me in June of last year. So writing up a verbal summary of where all this came from is loosely meant to be where these A, B, C, D emojis are found. But I only made it up to about letter B/G. So once this is done, which is all, if you go to letter decoding history index table, you can see the full project here, which would be probably a 1,000-page book if it was detailed out. And once this is done, then we will want to learn how words were formed from numbers. So this is divided into two parts. One is that in Samos, Egypt, the Samos cup has 27 symbols going up, numbers 1 through 900, or letters 1 through 900 shown here, up to Sampi. Samos Island is shown here, and my latest Greece is shown here. So this is the highest concentration of intellect in Greece. Thales was from here, Thales of Miletus, and Pythagoras was born on Samos Island. So this is where we get our most exact numbers to words formations. And then over here we have pre-Latin began to form over here, which is less mathematically exact. And we also have, this is called the Kirchhoff map, and we have the oldest Phoenician letters are shown here on Crete. The simplest numerical example we can show here is from where numbers became words, as we see 42 judgment hall gods. Each one of these has a feather of truth, which is where letter A comes from, the Shuf symbol. And there's one god for each nome of Egypt, 42 nomes of Egypt. And here we see the weighing of the heart of the deceased against the so-called feather, or the Mat goddess, or feather of truth goddess. So here we see justice in Egypt, and there were 42 laws. For example, don't steal, don't kill, don't sleep with your brother's wife, and so on. And there's 42 laws, and the measurement of justice was shown on a scale with the baboon, Thoth baboon monkey, which is the origin of letter Q. So the question of whether you did right or wrong, and when your soul or heart is measured in the after existence, depends on these 42 questions or 42 laws, whether you followed them or not. So this got formulated into the word dike. D is 4, I is 10, which comes from the horse falcon. D comes from the delta of letter B, or the pudenda, or vaginal pubic hair region of the woman. K comes from this so-called Ankh sign, which is what holds the Polaris pole, and then H is this is wrong here, this is not E, but H comes from the 4 finger digits. stacked on top of each other, which is where letter H comes from, and you get the word dike. So 42 gnome gods became the word dike. This is an exact mapping of how numbers became words, or in this case, the name of a goddess. Here we see a more clearer example where the word for cubit, which is the length from your start of your finger digit to your elbow, is 24 digits. This is called Pecus in Egypt. And the value of this word, P eta chi ys equals 1288. And this matches to the single finger digit called Cepheo, also equals 1288, or phi eta, or psi eta, phi iota, and O equals 1288. So we can argue here that it's probably not a coincidence that the Greek name for cubit, which is 24 digits, and the royal cubit is 28 digits, non-coincidentally equals the Greek name for digit. So the question we have here is, was this all invented by the Greeks? Which is what Karen Barry argues. Or did the mathematics of all of this come from Egypt? So one thing we'll note here is that we look back on all the Greeks, for example, Aristotle with his physics or his collected works here shown here. We think, oh wow, this Aristotle is so much of a genius. How did he write all of this stuff on linguistics, philosophy, politics, sociology, physics, mathematics? We think he just sort of poofed this all out of his head after being Plato's secretary. But the real truth of all of this is that they learned this is all Egyptian based. So the Greeks didn't somehow become geniuses overnight. Rather, they learned all of this from the Egyptians. And this diagram has already been filtered through Reddit, and it has about 3,000 people have viewed it, and it makes sense that this is probably not a coincidence. 10 upvotes, that cubit equals the same number. Some of these words, however, don't. When we go to Latin words such as lip or lingua or letters, it's probably not a coincidence that this letter L-shaped lip opening tool happens to be going towards the lips of the mummy. So here we have Latin words, but they're not mathematically based because Latin words ended up using a separate numerical system, which is shown over here. So over here we have Greek numerals and Greek letters were the same, but in Latin, or this is pre-Latin, the Romans ended up using separate numerals based on the Etruscan numeral system to make words, and they used separate letters to make words.